You're the big bad.
Where do you escape from? Sitcom hell?
Yeah, brightly lit monster man.
What the heck was that? That wasn't the ending you were expecting, was it? We had set you up to think you were going to see this big, scary monster at the ending, and then the reveal was just some flat, blaring light. It didn't set the mood at all, did it? There was no mood. There was no suspense. If we had lit that more dramatic, more suspenseful, and really followed through on the artistry of what that scene should have been, I bet you the ending would be very different. In fact, let's take a look and see what that should have looked like. All right, now that was much better, wasn't it? That was the kind of thing you expected to see in the first place. That lighting was appropriate for the scene. That set the mood. That maintained the horror and the scariness that we expected to see. And what was really different? I mean, it was the same actor, it was the same location. It's just different ways that we used the light to convey that mood. And when we're talking about lighting, that's really what we're talking about, isn't it? Is conveying a mood, because anybody could light a scene like we did, but that didn't work. What you want to do is you want to light it right and light it appropriate to convey a mood. You want to engage in this artistry. You want to paint that scene. That's what we're going to teach you in this DVD. And when we're done with you, you're going to be able to go from this to this. Will someone please teach me how to light? Number one question, right? That's really the question that brought you to getting this DVD. Why did it come about? Because when we're starting out, we go out and we make a movie or a little short film or something like that, and we show it to people. They look at it and like, why doesn't that look like TV? Why doesn't that look like a movie? And you don't know why. And somebody says, you need to learn how to light. So you're here. You want to learn how to light. Lighting is important. Lighting is a very important component of getting that film look or that TV look that you're after. It's not the only thing, and we'll talk about some of the other aspects as well, but it is very important. When you say you want to learn how to light, what does that really mean? What we're talking about is you want to learn how to convey an emotion through a scene properly, and lighting is a major component of that. Now, the thing to remember about lighting is that all the technical skills that you develop are really only there to serve your artistic goals. Without the artistic goals, the technicals don't mean a whole lot. So we do have to learn the technical aspects. We have to learn how to work with the fixtures. We have to learn lighting ratios. We have to learn all that stuff. But the reason why we're learning it is to serve our artistic goals, because once you know how all the lighting fixtures work and how light works, then you can put it to work to serve your artistic goal. Now, that all kind of presupposes that you have an artistic goal that you're moving towards. And for some people, maybe they just don't know what it is that they're trying to accomplish. Well, we're going to cover that. We're going to talk about the theories and the ideas and the whys behind horror movies or dramas or comedies or whatever specific genre it is that you're trying to do, so you'll know what you're trying to accomplish, and then the technical skills will serve to help you actually accomplish that goal. Now, to do all this, we're going to cover a lot of ground in this disc. We're going to start out with common misconceptions and mistakes that people make when they're first starting out. Then we're going to move into how light works. We're going to actually study how light moves and how you control it. When we talk about the technical aspects of lighting, first one is exposure. And this is the number one, most fundamental technique that you just have to get right, and it makes such a difference when you do. We'll talk about what is a proper exposure, how do you know when you've got it, and what it does for you when you get a good exposure. The next thing we need to go into is shadows. How we go about giving our images shape and texture and depth. And then we're going to show you some basic techniques, simple lighting techniques that are the fundamentals for everything else that you're going to build onto. So when you have all that together, we're going to wrap it all together and show you how that all serves the basic artistry of lighting. So you know what you're trying to accomplish and how you can set the mood. And we're going to talk about, various different moods that are out there and show you examples of what we change in order to accomplish those moods. Then we're going to talk about all the different kinds of lighting fixtures, whether it's a Fresnel or a Par or all these things that you may not even know what they are yet. You will by the time we're done. Add all the lighting support gear that goes with it. Speaking of artistic goals, we're even going to do 2 case studies, 2 short films that we had made specifically for this disc. And we're going to be able to go to the cinematographer and learn exactly what he had in mind. You're going to see what the setups were, what the fixtures were, why that those were chosen. So you're going to see exactly how the whole process works start to finish. Now, we can't possibly teach you everything. I mean, this will take you a long time to build your skill set up, but what we can do is give you a good solid grounding in the concepts and in the techniques so that you can build up your skills. Now, you also have to remember that everything that you're doing in lighting is to serve the purposes of your script. And we don't know what your script is. So obviously, you're going to have to take the techniques that we give you and what it is that you want to accomplish for each of those scenes, and we'll give you what you need to be able to bring that to fruition. But before we get into that, let's first take a look at some common mistakes that people make when they're first starting out with lighting.
Who are these guys? Adam Green and Jimmy Jimerson. Together, they make training DVDs.
You've got lights in the camera. Must be a movie myth.
Correctamundo, my Buckeye friend, and one I've been dying to test.
You got this off the internet, didn't you?
Right! And this myth says that whatever it is that you're shooting, as long as you light it properly, it'll look just like a Hollywood movie.
Yeah, I've read that out there on the forums.
Yes, the myth that lighting is everything.
Today, Adam and Jimmy do their darndest to see if lighting is all it takes to make your film look great. To test it, they've set up a scene in a typical no-budget location with professional techniques. They've done it all, but the results are not quite picture perfect.
Well, that doesn't look good at all.
I don't get it, dude. We use great lighting. It's those white walls. They are killing us, man.
Yeah, that still looks like some kind of public access show.
Well, there is a second part to this myth that says that we can still solve this through lighting alone.
Well, how do we do that?
We use some colored lights and we cut some holes in a piece of foam core.
You mean like shine some colored shapes on the wall?
Exactly!
All right, let's try it.
Still not there.
Yeah, that looks like some kind of cheap student film.
You know what I think the problem is? You just can't polish a turd.
Well, that sounds like something we can test. We can go down to the...
What I meant to say was, you can't put lipstick on a pig.
Well, I'll bet if we grabbed it by the leg and we just went...
While Adam explains the concept of a metaphor to Jimmy, let's look at the exact same lighting setup in front of a good-looking background.
Art direction.
Yeah, it definitely looks more like a real movie now.
We had great lighting. That wasn't enough. We had to have something that looked good, and then the lighting made it look fantastic.
Well, can't argue with results. Art direction solved our problem.
So we're calling this one Broken.
Definitely broken.
People choose these horrible, ugly locations and they want to try to solve the inherent problems with lighting. And it's not going to get you there, guys. I mean, if you're looking at a bare white wall room, there's only so much that you can do with lighting. And I know people will tell you, oh, lighting will fix that. No, it won't. If you want to get a good looking image, the first thing you want to do is point the camera at something that looks good. Art direction will make a huge improvement in the overall look of your scene. If you're pointing the camera at something that looks good, and then we bring in light to enhance it, that's gold. That's fantastic. But if you're coming into a plain room and your whole solution for the entire scene is you got a white wall behind you, and so you're going to cut some slashes in a piece of foam core and try to blast some Venetian blind looking thing on there, it's going to look like every other low budget, no talent kind of thing where people try to salvage a bad situation. And the bad situation is having an ugly location. Location is key. Location is one of the huge things, and it's one of the simplest things to get right. Why not just go to a place that has properly painted walls that look fantastic? Why not spend a little bit of money on some wallpaper or some paint or something like that and make a good looking scene? And then we use light to enhance that scene instead of trying to create something that isn't there and you're probably not going to be successful trying to create anyway.
I can't see a thing. Shouldn't there be more light than this?
It's night. Things are supposed to be dark. But not this dark.
What's all this fuzzy stuff flying around? Are you using your magic again?
No.
Well, maybe you should conjure up a few hundred watts so we don't fall into a pit or something.
Vanilla. Nice work, Red.
Next thing we're going to talk about is people who just don't get enough light on their scene for a proper exposure. And especially usually when this happens, somebody's trying to shoot a night scene or they're trying to shoot a moody scene, and they think that if they put any light in there, that it's going to ruin the scene. And so they try to go with available light or dark light, and the result is always a nasty, grainy, muddy, ugly image. Let's get past that. Let's teach you how to avoid that trap. I mean, first of all, when you're shooting a scene that's supposed to be taking place in low light, you don't actually usually use low light. You still use enough light to get a good, proper exposure on your subject. What we do is we flag that light off to make sure that it's not flooding the scene. We make sure that there are elements of dark in the scene, but the actual exposure on the subject is going to be just about as bright as it would be if you were shooting a daylight scene. And in order to do that, use enough light. It's that simple. Okay, it's not that simple. There's more to it, but we have to start with that because for some reason, I don't understand why, sometimes people want to think of any other possible way to manipulate their image other than the simple, easy way of adding enough light to it. So I don't want you guys to go, oh, let's just crank up the gain some. That's not a good solution. Or let's drop the shutter speed. That'll mess up your motion blur. You don't want to do that. And you can open the iris up to some degree, but you shouldn't have your scene dictated by what your iris can go to. You should use enough light in the first place. Paint your image, and by the time you're done with this DVD, you're going to know how to do that, okay? So use enough light on the image so that your camcorder is being fed enough information that it can properly capture that. You've got to have enough light. Sometimes people want to think, hey, let's get a camera with great low light performance and then we won't have to worry about lighting. Of course you have to worry about lighting. A challenge people have is they think, let's just shoot with available light or these cameras are so sensitive we don't need much light. Pretty much, yes, you do. Especially if you're going to be using one of these 35mm adapters or something to give you a shallower depth of field. If you use one of those, you'll find that you have a lot less light sensitivity with that adapter installed than you did otherwise, which means we're going to need more light to get the exposure back up where it should be. And then when we talk about outdoors at night, okay, now is where we can run into a lot of problems because for some reason, filmmakers want to think that we don't light outdoor scenes, especially at night. And frequently, you're spending more time and energy lighting a good-looking outdoor scene than you do during a daytime scene. Because a night scene, we don't just want to have everything look dark. We have to feed the camcorder enough information. It's a light-gathering device. We have to feed the film stock enough light that it can expose properly. So you want to light your subjects just as brightly outdoors as you would indoors. And the key difference is that outdoors, there are things that are naturally dark, and that lends to the feeling of dark. Let's go back to the characters in our opening sketch for a minute. And let's take a look at how we could have shot that. We could have tried to do it with available light or just with, a low light because we want a dark scene, right? And when you do that, look what you get. You get very low exposure, and so the range that it's exposing in is down in the bottom area of the brightness scale, which is where all the noise lives. So we end up with a very flat, noisy, ugly picture. Now, you could try to bring that into post. I mean, that's the first thing we're going to do, right? And let's say, oh, let's brighten it in post. We'll fix it in post. You're going to learn to hate that phrase because look what happens. all that noise and crud that's in the image, now it gets magnified. And now the picture may not look sharp enough, so maybe you try some post-sharpening and oh great, now it gets even noisier and uglier. Well, let's just look at what would have happened if we would have shot it right the first time with enough light in the first place. And it looks like this. A huge improvement, don't you think? If you shoot right in the first place, then you have so much more information to work with. And then when you go into post, you can tweak and push and pull, and you can have good information to work with. We're not dealing with garbage in, garbage out at this point. Good quality footage captured right the first time is going to always beat anything you try to manipulate and drag out and salvage in post. So do it right the first time.
Well, you see, I think this looks good. I got rid of all the shadows.
Oh, no, sweetheart.
Tacky.
Ugh. Blair, do you think this is flattering?
Yeah, I think it is. There were shadows and I got rid of them.
You also got rid of, I don't know, any depth or interest in this scene? I mean, like, where's the drama?
Yeah. It's like, what are you trying to say with this light? Because I'll tell you what you are saying. Boring.
We understand you want to get rid of all the bad shadows, but you've wiped out everything. There's nothing interesting in this picture. And your film is a young, hip, edgy number, isn't it?
Exactly. Look, right now, you're completely flat. You're like a pancake. But we give you a little shadow. We really bring out your face and bring depth to the picture.
It's such a cute little face, too. Why wash it out? Look at those features. Use them. Bring them out.
Yeah, you need shadows in a picture. Don't chase them all down. Otherwise, you might as well be looking for a laugh track and not a musical score.
So now you've seen 3 major mistakes that people make when they're first starting out trying to light their scenes. And just to recap, those mistakes are using inappropriate locations with no art direction, not using enough light to get a proper exposure, and not using the right kind of shadows to give depth or shaping to their images. To see the difference between footage where all of those mistakes are made and when they're not, let's look at the rehearsal footage from our opening sketch. We were just running through the lines and blocking when we did this, so the lighting didn't matter. And it shows. This doesn't look cinematic at all. Looking at this image, all of the mistakes are in there. First, there's no art direction at all. We've got no makeup, no costumes, no props, no anything. It's a buffet of filmmaking lessons right there. But let's just look at where we are. It's a totally inappropriate location for the kind of mood and atmosphere we wanted. When we shot the production footage, we were in an appropriate location. We're running through a park, or what looks like a park, in the middle of the night, with wisps of fog and all the kinds of things you might see or were accustomed to seeing in that kind of a scene. That alone makes a huge, huge difference. And add in the costumes, makeup, props, and so forth, the overall level of cinematic feel goes way, way up. Now what else was wrong in the rehearsal footage? It's underexposed. We were just using the indoor fluorescent lights, which really weren't all that bright. A camera needs plenty of light. Just going with what we found in the room, we've got an image a lot darker than what we'd really want. When we shot the scene for real, we made sure we had plenty of light and got the right level of exposure, making a huge difference. And then, look at the direction of the lighting in the rehearsal footage. It's just pouring down from the ceiling like we were shooting a deposition or a birthday party or something like that. It gives us a little shadow, but it doesn't give us anything interesting or pleasing or dramatic or the slightest bit cinematic. It's just what you'd see in someone's home videos. On location, we've got nice, appropriate shaping. We've got some drama. We've got some depth and interest. We've got a good cinematic look here. And why? Because we brought the light in from the side, not from above, not from the front, but from the side. Now, not too far from the side, or our characters' faces would look like half moons. Not too close to the front, or we'd just be blaring light and have no shaping at all. No, we brought in the light from about 45 degrees from the camera, giving us some nice shaping and depth. And we did all that by doing the opposite of the mistakes we told you about. Basically, we did 3 things. We pointed the camera at something that looked good and appropriate for the type of scene we were trying to do. We got a proper exposure, and we brought in the light from about 45 degrees. And doing those 3 things is going to get you 80% of the way toward the cinematic results that you're looking for. Now, it's not going to do everything for you. McGregor is going to have a lot more to say about this 45-degree rule when we get into the case studies, and Barry's going to have quite a bit more to say about exposure and how specific placement of lights can create or enhance particular moods. And you've seen some things, and are going to see some things that we did, which look a little less than cinematic, and there's a reason for that too. But before we can get into all of that, first we have to teach you about how light works. And in order to do that, Barry needs to get into a little